it takes about, if their hair is shorter, I can knock it out in 2 hours. That's me, you know. I have some clients who do their own hair, and what I do in an hour and a half takes them 4 hours. So it just depends on the person, what all they're doing while they're doing their hair, how used to it they are. It's a bunch of different factors. New growth is whatever's puffy. So like if I unravel this, all of that that's not locked down here is new growth.
Now what? Your hair just keeps growing?
It just keeps growing into the lock. The new growth is going to stay puffy until it mats into this lock.
New growth is where the reason money is.
Right. You're not even worried about it. This is already locked. So all you're doing is just shampooing, conditioning, and your work is going to be everything. If I just leave it, it's going to be a pro. It's going to be this with locks on it. So that's what it works.
Combine two mature locks to make it.
Okay, that's a good question. Combining locks. Sometimes when people's hair grows out, it gets a little thinner, and they want to do what's called lock combinations or lock marrying. With that, you can do 2 things. You can either take loose lock extension kinky hair and wrap them together, or you can use the interlocking method and interlock them together at the root. What's going to happen is once you put them together at the root, they're going to grow out into one lock from that point on, and then you can decide to either cut one of those extra locks off or just leave them split at the end. Any other questions? Yes.
So what about when you see people have a braid or frame with the 2 strands in the back? Is that a form of starting?
No, if you see somebody, that's what she's asking about what's on the mannequin over here. If you see somebody with flat braids and then 2-strand twists coming off, they're not trying to start locks, they just wanted braids with 2-strand twisted that way.
Oh yeah, they did.
Because anybody trying to start locks is not going to flat braid or flat twist anything to the scalp. They're going to keep it all individual. Now, you may see somebody who left it in too long, and it looks like they're trying to lock their hair, but that just means they need to get their hair done.
Like, well, yeah, I turned up with it.
Right, no, they just waited too long to get it redone. That's all it means. Any more questions? Yes.
I just got in here, so I don't know if you already told them this, but in the state of Georgia, you might have a license to do that.
No, in the state of Georgia, natural hair does not require a license because we tend to not work with chemicals. Most of the hairstyling techniques require a license because you're working with some kind of chemical to do the person's hair. Natural hair, you should not need any kind of chemicals to do it, so therefore you don't have to be licensed. Now, I will say, even though I'm a natural stylist and we like working without having the thing of needing a license over our heads, a lot of these hair braiding shops that tear people's edges out should have to require a license. If that means I have to be licensed, I'm willing to go along with it because it's a lot of hair salon / braiding places popping up that really are not about caring for your hair. They just want your money. So whatever method and product they're using to do your hair, they're not thinking about the end result and what's it going to do to your hair. They're just thinking about I want your money today. So in that instance, yeah, natural hair products should require a license to help monitor those types of situations. But in general, natural hairstylists do not need a license because we don't work with chemicals. As natural stylists, we should be using the most natural thing possible to help your hair grow, help it feel good, help it stay in place the way you want it to.
Pinch and turn?
That pinch and turn method is what the braiding shops tend to use, and they use that black gel. And that pinch and turn ends up making you like a poodle that just left the dog shop. Because you'll have pinch and a puff, and a pinch and a puff. That's what it ends up looking like. It'll start off looking smooth a certain way, but eventually it'll be pinch, puff, because the pinch is where the gel is and the puff is where the gel isn't. So you don't want to do that. Another thing about starting locks that I wanted to say is you always want to start small and make them bigger later. Like I always tell clients, you know, be sure about what size you want your locks to be. Because if you start them off large, then they're going to be large and that's that. But if you start them off small and you decide you want them a little bigger later, you can always marry every 2 locks together or every 3 locks together and make them bigger later. So if you think you might change your mind on what size you want, I say start small and then make them big. Because if you start off with block locks, then you're going to have block locks the whole time.
Is there standard size or you just say?
The standard size I tend to call medium, which is small medium. Some people like my sister like micro. Yeah, mine are like medium. Mine actually started off smaller than this. When I started my locks, they were half this size. then about a year into it, I decided I wanted them a little bigger, so I put every two together. So they would have been smaller than this had I left them, but I decided I didn't want micro locks, so I put every two together. That's another thing, like for somebody like me, big chunky locks are not gonna happen. I know my hair texture and I know what my hair looks like when it's grown out. So if I decide to combine all of these into every two, it's not gonna be bigger, it's just gonna be less locks on my head. So keep that in mind also. If you have thick hair, no matter what size you make them, your hair's gonna be thick. But if you have thinner hair, it's just gonna be less locks on your head the more you combine. Any more questions? Is that it? No more questions? All right. I had a blast with you guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for asking all the questions you asked. I hope I answered all of your natural hair questions. You're all going to get my card before I leave, so you can call me and ask me anything I missed. But hopefully this helps you guys learn about what you're not seeing in class. You know, because I know they do the chemical stuff and the weeds and everything. You guys are cutting hair. I mean, you know, I wanted you guys to have an alternative, so I'm glad I was invited in to help you learn a little bit about that.
Thank you.